Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to pre-base camp learning and meeting the speakers. I am joined today, and I want you to know that this is like a very special interview because Dr. Dan Lyons has taken time not just out of his day, but out of his holiday. He is so excited about base camp. He said, I'm going to do it on a holiday in the middle of the day. What the heck?
Absolutely.
And so he is here to talk with us a little bit about his talk, which is going to really, it's kind of the keynote speech of the whole weekend, because it's on the end of the weekend. And by then you get to an audience who is like, I can't wait. No pressure.
No,
Dr. Lyons, thank you for joining me today. Thanks for coming to base camp. We appreciate you being here.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I love the whole idea of base camp. As a hunter and needing and camper avid and wanting to get out into the wild. I was out setting up tree stands yesterday with my dad. I love being outside. And so base camp, just a name, even if it's like in the middle of a city, if you call it base camp, I'm going to be there.
Well, thanks. I knew it would be inspiring that way. Well, we think too of base camp as, if you're going to go do something big, like climb a mountain, especially a really high summit, you have to have a base camp, right?
Absolutely. Got to have a solid foundation, a good base.
Yeah, and that's where you gather your team. You don't just do those things by yourself. Do you go camping or hunting by yourself?
Do I? Yeah, a lot of times, but not out in the mountains.
Okay. Take friends.
Yes.
Who run slower than you do.
That is very wise advice.
So our base camp attendees, some of them are new and they've never been to base camp before. Some of them are repeat because they like to be there every year and get more information about how to build their practices. And they want to know, what is your superpower?
I know how to grind. If you're going to be good at anything, and we all have a range of abilities at different things, but to be great at something, you have to know how to grind. And when you don't feel like getting up and doing it, you still have to get up and go do that. And I remember watching a interview with Kobe Bryant before he passed away, and they asked him about Shaq, and he said, if Shaq had my work ethic, he would be the best player that the league has ever seen. But he just didn't work as hard. And so that's why you come in the middle of your holiday, because you got to grind. I already had 2 days off. I don't need 3 in a row. So that's why we're here.
There you go.
But I would really say that, I'm just very consistent. It doesn't matter if I don't. I was speaking 2 weeks ago in Mexico, came back. Somehow I got some water. So I had Montezuma's Revenge for the last 2 weeks, just got over it. I didn't miss a beat in the office. It just, you have to find a way to make it work. And that's what I do.
Awesome. So that sounds like there's got to be some inspiration in there too.
Yeah, there is. When you look at, chiropractic is a philosophy, science, and art. And so if you want to be a great chiropractor, or the best you can be, you have to be well versed in the philosophy and the science and the art. And so those are the things, and I grind them out every day. I probably find more papers than I read that day to study, scientific papers to apply. I'm a diplomate in philosophy, and I teach the philosophy, all 3 years of the philosophy program. And I'm also a Gonstead instructor. So I take all those 3 things, and I just, every time I talk, I try and mash them all together so that you don't just get a bunch of philosophy that doesn't really tie in with everything. I want to wrap it all up with a bow and give it to you, so you understand the philosophy and why it's important, and how science's job is to validate that idea the philosophy gave us, and then our art is there to connect those two and deliver the promise that our philosophy made. And
I like it. That is cool.
so we just
And
always trying to find new ways, because there's always as more papers are published, we learn more about the body. I mean, we know almost nothing about the physiology of the nervous system. We know the anatomy, but how it works and does all the things that it does, we don't know anything about that. So there's always more research to come out to try and tie in. And strangely enough, if you read it, it almost always validates our philosophy. And then we just have to make sure that our art is connecting it.
awesome. I'm writing a note because it gave me an idea. All right. So tell me, this superpower, what validates that for you? Like, how do you know that that's really the thing?
How do I know that it's really good?
That it's good, that it's working, that it's, yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know. I get asked to speak more places and teach more places, so I must be doing something right. My results with my patients get better as I keep doing it. You have to, I suppose, grinding things out like that. And I don't mean that most people, when they hear grind it out, they have a negative, they get something that they don't want to do. And I don't feel that way about practice at all, or anything I do. I enjoy it, but it is, you have to master it and do it over and over and over again. You should get better. I mean, every day I come in the office and I'm like, hey, I'm way better at this than I was yesterday or last week. Cervical chair or pelvic bench or scoping or something is getting better. And I notice it markedly. But you have to do that with your eyes open. So you realize, BJ wrote about slipping and checking. And so you got to realize when you're slipping so you can check that and get back on the right path. Otherwise, if you're grinding, you're creating habits and neural pathways that are connected to a bad process, which will lead you to a bad outcome, and you don't want that. We have good habits and bad habits. We want to get rid of the bad ones.
Absolutely. So that sounds like it takes repetition and immersion and, modeling by yourself and by other people to help you keep in those habits.
100%.
Right.
I read a book called, what was it? It was a habit book. I just read it. And I thought I had it on the desk, but I must have loaned it to someone. He had an interesting take on it. And I remember back 30 years ago, being in school, they were Chris Kent and Pat Gentempo were talking about be, do, have, or have, do, be. And most people think that the world is have, do, be. When I have $1 million, I will do these things and I will be that kind of person. But really, you have to be that millionaire that will create those habits, and then you will have the $1 million. And in this book, he had a different take on it, in that you can create a habit to get you to an outcome. So if you want to lose 20 pounds, you get a habit of going for a walk a couple times a day, maybe cutting down on what you eat, and that'll become a habit. But once you get your outcome, then that habit doesn't serve you anymore. And so you're likely to drop that habit at some point in time because you want to have a piece of cake, or it's raining out and you don't want to go for your walk. What you really need to do is you need to decide who you are as a person, what you want, and then you will create the habits that supports that idea. And I love that because, it comes back to, the philosophy, the science, and an art. We have an idea, the philosophy, and then we have science to validate and document and prove that, and the art to connect that and deliver that promise.
I love that. And I love the thing I had written down earlier was that the art is the freedom to work within that framework.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I won't be at base camp because I'll be speaking at Palmer Homecoming, and the class I do there is Gonstead for the non-Gonstead chiropractors. So, when most people think of Gonstead, they think of scoping and they think of the cervical chair, the pelvic bench, and stuff. But that's not really Gonstead. The Gonstead system is an idea. This is how we find the subluxation, and then once we know what the subluxation is, usually the most effective way to correct it would be the chair or the bench or the knee chest. But it's not the only way, and usually could be 51% of the time. The chair and the bench are just tools. It's a technique. But if you don't know what your subluxation really looks like and what the best way to correct it is, then you're just going to be a mechanic instead of a doctor.
So why will base camp attendees be? It sounds like you've already hit this one. Why will they be inspired by what you have to tell them?
Because I'm going to tell them they have to be inspired because it's at base camp.
I love it. So, base camp, it's going to be so much fun.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. And I hope I can make it out to one sometime. But hopefully they learn a little more about philosophy and gain a new appreciation for it and why it's so important in our lives. And I make them think of not only what they do day to day, taking care of their patients, but also bigger picture outside. Everyone in the technique world, their minds are really pretty myopic. It's like, I do this, I don't do that, I don't do that, so we don't talk to those. My wife's a chiropractor. When she did practice, she didn't do Gonstead, and that kind of freaked people out that I married someone that didn't do Gonstead. I'm like, I didn't know you could only fall in love in your seminar group. And when I met Dr. Bill out at Mile High, and my wife was speaking there, and we had just like 2 weeks earlier had our biggest Gonstead seminar. I had like 300 people at the Gonstead clinic, and there was a student from Life there that was at the Gonstead seminar, and she was at Mile High, and she's kind of off to the side. She goes, "Hi, Dr. Lyons." I said, "Hey, Katie." She's standing there, so I knew she wanted to talk. So when I could get out of one conversation, I went over there, and she kind of walked me around the corner so we weren't around anybody. And then she goes, "Why are you here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "This isn't a Gonstead seminar." I said, "Did I miss a board meeting? I'm on all the boards, but I don't think they said we can't go to non-Gonstead seminars." And she said, "But you were talking to Donnie Epstein." I said, "Same question, why can't it talk?" But I saw Donnie check and adjust you. And I was just like, why do we think this way, that we can't go outside? And one of my mentors was Dr. Phyllis Markham, and you'll hear a little bit about her in the presentation. But she's the person that convinced Dr. Gonstead to start teaching, and she and her husband sold their clinic and moved to Mount Horeb, where they helped set up and run the seminars, and she ran his x-ray department for 20 years. And she was the one that instilled that in me, where we don't think that way. It's just, we understand the subluxation, and then what we do is usually the best way to fix it, but it's not the only way. But when she first wanted Dr. Gonstead to start teaching them, so her husband and 3 other friends from Lincoln College, which then I was there a couple of weeks ago. It's a parking lot now. It's so sad. But then National bought all that stuff and moved it up to Chicago. But those 5 people went to Dr. Gonstead's clinic on a Sunday, and the first seminar lasted about 5 minutes before he kicked them out. And she begged and begged and begged, and he said, "You don't even know what you need to know in order for me to teach you what you want to know." And so she begged, and so he gave them all a bunch of books to read, other chiropractors' work. They had to know Major DeJarnette's SOT work. They had to know Illy's work and a couple others, Homewood's. but he wanted them to understand all that stuff because that's what he studied, so that he could take the bits and pieces that he agreed with them on or learned from them. I don't know. I never met the man. And then he put them all together into what he did. And if you just sit around the same people that think the same things as you never have a new thought. And that's a kind of scary way to live.
Yeah. I think sometimes we have to talk to people we don't even agree with.
Oh,
because it can definitely change our perspective on life, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what would be your $1 million bonus tip for a base
My
camp?
$1 million bonus tip. Investigate early. So if something new comes across your thing, look into it early. And Dr. Gonstead always, if there was a new scope out, he was buying it to see if it was better. I don't have it in here. I just got the new EDL maker of the nervous scope. They have some new scopes out, so I just got one. It's back in the room. I thought I had it charging here, but it's all charged up. So do that early. If you would have got in early in Bitcoin, $100, you'd be a billionaire right now. But most of us didn't, and including myself. If we would have bought when my wife wanted me to buy, I could probably buy 2 schools now. But we hesitated. I didn't know. Wasn't paying any attention to Bitcoin. I was busy, working in the office and teaching. So lost out that opportunity. Don't be me. Don't miss out on those opportunities. So, right. And just because you adopt early doesn't mean you have to stay with it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if you don't know, you're going to miss out on some big stuff.
That's a great tip. That's a great philosophy on life too, I think. Mm-hmm. So thank you really much. That sounds great. Thank you a lot for coming in on a holiday to speak with us and bringing Sophie with you, because I think her inspiration has helped a lot.
Because I think she fell asleep over here now.
There you go. We are so looking forward to seeing you at base camp. I know you're splitting your time with us and things that are going on other places, because it is the birthday of chiropractic that weekend. And we'll be celebrating it too. And excellent. For those people who want to join us, you can find it at animalchiropracticeducation.com/basecamp. It's right under courses. We've got a couple different levels that people can come in on. There might be people who just want to come in and listen to Dr. Lyons speak and not get all the other stuff. And you can do that for $197.
That would not be early adopting. The early adopting means you got to take it all in.
Exactly. But those are the people who, there's people who are like, I just want to get the stuff. I don't necessarily want the CE. Those people who are going to get not just animal chiropractic CE, but we have chiropractic CE hours. We have veterinary CE hours. There are 5 chiropractic CE hours approved for base camp. There are 12 veterinary CE hours that are approved for base camp, and that's in every state. And for those people who like to double up and do 2 things in the same day, like speak at base camp and at Palmer, that VIP package is what you really want. And it actually will give you additional time with the speakers and the bonus replays for like 6 months afterwards. So
that's a great deal.
Yeah. So register at animalchiropracticeducation.com/basecamp, and that'll give you a lot more details. Thanks a bunch, Dr. Lyons, and we will see you soon.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day.